Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see everyone. Tonight we're studying Parashat Yitro, and we're studying the holy words of Shimshon Pincus. May his great merit be upon us. This week we are reading the 10 Commandments for the first of 2 times in our Torah. Now, each commandment needs a whole class on its own, but Rabbi Pincus shares a gem on one of the greatest commandments of our Torah, and that's why it finds itself in the 10 Commandments. And that is the following. Take a look at your screen. This is in chapter 20, verse 8. It is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Remember the Sabbath day to sanctify it. So, Shabbat's a very special day. And there's a mitzvah, a special mitzvah to remember that day. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat, to remember it. How do we remember it? We remember it by doing Kiddush, by praying, by doing our Amidah. There's another mitzvah of preparing for Shabbat. And preparing what? Preparing special food, delicacies, comfortable atmosphere. So how does this mitzvah make any sense, Pincus says? On Rosh Hashanah, we blow shofar. We understand how powerful it is and important it is to blow shofar, because when we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that's what, tips our judgment, gives us favorable judgment. On Sukkot, we have to shake the 4 species and enter a sukkah. On Passover, we got to eat matzah. And the list goes on and on and on and on. Shabbat? Oh, you know what the mitzvah of Shabbat is? Eating fancy food, drinking, relaxing. That's how you observe Shabbat. So Pincus says, no, that's not how you observe Shabbat. That's not the point of Shabbat. Rather, there is no item or vessel that we can use to merit Shabbat. Right? When we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that's how we merit good judgment. When we eat the matzah on Passover, that's how we infuse ourselves with emunah. Shabbat's different. Shabbat's a direct gift from God. It's a special, special gift. All we need to do to merit Shabbat, Rabbi says, is you have to want Shabbat. When a person prepares the delicacies for Shabbat, especially if they're preparing from early on in the week, he or she is showing that they are looking forward to Shabbat. They're excited for Shabbat to come. That person who wants Shabbat will have Shabbat. The Shulchan Aruch writes that one shouldn't think of business on Shabbat. Shouldn't think what he has to do, what he should have done, what he's going to do. Rather, you're supposed to look as everything's completed. It's all done. On Shabbat also, a person is not supposed to worry about their parnasa, about their livelihood. It's all prepared. It's all done. On Shabbat, the Shulchan Aruch writes, we don't read mundane literature. Newspapers, for example. Why? Why can't we do any of these? So Pincus says, imagine your parents travel from far to come to visit you. And they come to spend time with you. They come over to your house. And you're sitting down at the couch and you just whip out the newspaper. Whip out the newspaper? How embarrassing. It's prohibited to cook on Shabbat. It's one of the 39 milachot. Why? Pincus says it's for the same reason. He says, imagine your parents come over and you leave them in your salon for 2 hours while you're in the kitchen cooking and baking. They didn't come to eat with you. They came to spend time with you. Okay, you have something to serve, you serve it, but that's not the point. The point was to come and spend quality time. This, Rabbi says, is exactly what Hashem wants from us. If we prepare for Shabbat, then we could enjoy Shabbat. If we cook before Shabbat, we could eat on Shabbat. If we set everything up, we prepare for that atmosphere, fine. But Shabbat's not the time to prepare for Shabbat. The guest's already here. Shabbat's the time to sit around the table, to share Divrei Torah, to sing songs of praise to Hashem, to enjoy your family. The Talmud says that on Shabbat, we host Hashem himself. His Shekhinah, his presence, is in our homes. Granted, if there is Shalom Bayit. Not if, God forbid, there's any anger. The Talmud Yerushalmi says there was a special allowance given to people to greet another person on Shabbat. Because in truth, what right do we have when we're in Hashem's presence, when we're with Hashem, to put Hashem to the side and say, oh, let me go say hi to this mortal person? We're allowed to, but it's because we have a special allowance. That's just the, again, we have to start developing these sensitivities and incorporate them in our Shabbat. But that's the goal. So how do we create this special Shabbat atmosphere? The way to do it is to, Rabbi Pincus says, is to remember that it is Shabbat. Don't mess up. Remember that when you're sitting at the table, it's a Shabbat table. Remember to direct the conversations appropriately. Remember to sing the right songs, to do the right things, to have the special food. The food, the drink, the song, that's not the point of Shabbat. That's the way to observe Shabbat. That's the way to show that you really are ready for Shabbat and that you want Shabbat. So Rav Pincus is teaching us this evening is that if you want to observe Shabbat and if you want to fulfill Shabbat in its proper way, the mitzvah is to remember it. How do you remember it? You remember it by preparing for it. And during Shabbat, you remember it is Shabbat today. Today's a different day. Today I went to go visit a friend, student of mine, who's in the middle of doing a massive project. And he himself, so a construction project, he himself was doing, hard labor, something that you would think, the handyman was to be doing. And we're talking. I said, what are you doing this for? He says, if I'm not here and the workers don't see me doing this, they're just going to move slow. And there's nothing like when the boss is on the floor in any type of business. They see me moving, they keep on moving. He looks at me and says, Rabbi, I'm exhausted. I'm just exhausted. I'm drained. This is the last stretch and it's exhausting. I look at him and I say, Mr. So-and-so, isn't it so special that we have Shabbat? He says, Rabbi, if I didn't have Shabbat, I would have broke down a long time ago. The fact that we're able to pause and stop and connect with our families, connect with our prayer, connect with Hashem, connect with Torah, allow our body to relax, our spirit to relax, is something that is inherently a gift. This was the great gift that God gave Bnei Israel when Hashem brought Moshe up. He says to him, I have something in my treasure chest, a special gift for Bnei Israel. And it was Shabbat. So again, there's no specific mitzvah on Shabbat. It's just the atmosphere. It's like in one way, if you don't know what you're looking for, a Wednesday night dinner and a Friday night dinner both look the same. But when you understand the sensitivity, when you know what you're looking for, you can't compare the two. They could be so similar yet so different. All based on if you know what to look for. Do you know which cues are there? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us that we make our Shabbat atmosphere, our Shabbat meals, our celebration of Shabbat high, holy, lofty, and that we remember it and that we want it and we look forward for it. That is how we observe Shabbat. That's how we are Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Remember Shabbat lekadesho, to sanctify it. Remember it during the week to prepare for it, and on Shabbat itself, remember that it's Shabbat, and that sanctifies it.